All right, we are ready to get started. For the class project, we're going to be creating two visuals, both inspired by travel. We're going to be creating a landscape visual, that's the one we're going to be tackling first, which is a bit more simple approach than the second one, which is going to be a suitcase visual. Now, I say that these are two different approaches because the landscape visual has a few bigger, chunkier assets that we're going to be applying textures to. When it comes to the suitcase itself, there's a lot more smaller elements that we have to apply that textured look to. So we have to really get in there and apply more attention to that one. If you are experienced in Illustrator and you have created a visual that you just want to apply this texture look to, I am excited to see that as well. So please go ahead and do your own thing. Let's get into it. For the class project, all you're going to be needing is a piece of paper or a notebook, a pencil or a pen, a computer, obviously, and a copy of Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop. In the first lesson, we're going to be tackling some quick sketches to lay down the blueprint of our illustrations. There's nothing worse than jumping onto a computer, staring at a blank screen, and hoping that some ideas just pop in our head. So grab your pencil and paper, and let's get into it. I'll see you there. Okay, we're going to jump into some sketches. These are going to be really, really simple and very rough. We don't have to worry about creating a masterpiece or even overthinking this part of the process because we're just doing something super duper quick with pencil. And again, we're just basically getting started and exploring what the opportunities are before we jump onto the computer. So for our exercise right now, I'm going to be using a pencil and a moleskin notebook, but feel free to use whatever you have, even if it's a scrap piece of paper. Just get something onto paper. Okay, using my moleskin, I'm going to use both sides of my paper. And I'm going to make a quick note at the top of my sketch here, 1080 by 1080, because I want to remember that. And I like to draw the artboard out, so I have a bit of a guide on what I'll be putting within here. And the suitcase we'll be drawing could be a classic suitcase. It also could be one of these modern ones that has that handle on the top. And I like to explore outside of my artboard itself, or my fake artboard in my sketch. Maybe this could be a duffel bag. I'm pretty sure we don't want to do a duffel bag, but duffel bag look cool. What I'd like us to create for our example today is one of those vintage briefcases with the straps on them. And they have a nice chunky handle here. And that could be filled in with a color. But they have these straps here, almost like leather straps that hold them together with a bit of a buckle. And their edges here will have these little corner protectors. And what I think is maybe they have these, you have these badges of honor. Maybe one of them could have a tree in it, because I envisioned that this would have stickers on it, almost like they had traveled all over the world. Can't forget the buckles here. And it's going to be living on a bit of a surface here. And I want to add some shadows. And I think that it could be highlighted as well. So maybe it's got a bit of shine in the background. And that's what we'll do. We'll draw this one out. I think this one's good to go. And now for the second one, and this was going to be the easier approach here. Now again, drawing another artboard. The easier approach one will be a landscape, and what I think we could do is we can do a bunch of layered, chunky elements. This is going to be a tree. You'd see this is in the background here. Maybe the tree has some details here. Some little critters can live inside this. And I think we should draw more pine trees as well. And there's a few ways we can draw pine trees. We can do them as triangles. We can do them as layered triangles. Maybe they're a bit taller. I think that's the way we want to go. So let's draw that there. And again, that's going to be a different color. And there's an ocean behind here, and it has water. Or maybe it's a lake. And there's different ways we can draw water. I just want to remind myself outside the page. Maybe there are the wavy kind rather than the upside down birds. And adding rolling hills, I think that this is going to look good when we are playing around with our layers here. And maybe there's mountains, and this is where a beautiful scene comes into play here. And they could be snowy peaks, perhaps. Maybe they are textured on the edges. They could have textures or lines running across them. I definitely want to have one in front of the other so it shows a little bit more depth there. And of course in the sky, we would need, obviously, some clouds. And maybe there's more clouds in the background. Maybe they bleed off the edge. Almost similar to the way we did our trees. Or maybe we could just keep it like that. There it is. We have the bones of our sketch down. We're going to go ahead and take a picture of this, or if you have a scanner, scan it in. In the next lesson, we're going to be drawing these vector images out. See you there. Okay, we are on our computer now. We're ready to get started here. At this point, we've all taken a picture of our sketch. I have mine on my desktop here. It's strategically labeled sketch, and let's quickly inspect it here. It looks really good. I can clearly see all the lines that I've drawn out here. The sketchbook itself isn't in on any harsh angles, so I'm not going to be thrown off when I am drawing any objects on top of this here. Looks really good. Use your own judgment. Make sure you can see what's going on here, and you can work with the sketch picture that you have taken or the scan that you're working with. All right, now let's go ahead and fire up Adobe Illustrator. If you don't have Adobe Illustrator, go ahead and use the link in the class description. That's going to give you a 14-day free trial for the entire Creative Suite. That includes Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop. That's going to help you get through this exercise today. Once you do have it open, go ahead and hit Create New. And if you recall when we were doing our sketch, we made that note that we're going to be doing this at 1080 by 1080 because we're going to be sharing this with our friends on Instagram when we're done. So go change the units here to pixels, and let's change the width to 1080, and we'll change the height to 1080, and we'll label our file SS Drawings. I don't know. Use a more creative title if you want your file name to be cooler than mine. And then go down to color mode here and change this to RGB. Now we're changing this to RGB because we're going to be using screens to display our drawings. So it's going to be shown on our phone or on our computers. We're not going to be printing this out, which is more CMYK. That's what that color mode is for. So change yours to RGB and make sure we have this at 300 pixels per inch. All right, go ahead and hit create. All right, now we see our artboard here. We're ready to... It looks nice and square. We're ready to get started. One thing we should mention before we do jump in, your screen might look a little bit different from mine. Make sure that you are on the painting workspace up here in the top right. You can make your own, so you can eliminate any tools that you don't tend to use or that you find confusing. You don't really need it in your face there. I encourage you to make your own workspace. I've done that in previous Skillshare classes, but for this one, to keep things simple, we're going to be using the painting workspace. Great. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and bring in our sketch. Go File, Place. There's our sketch. Place that here. We're going to see a thumbnail of it. Let's click. Whoa, it's huge. Let's use our zoom tool and step back a little bit. And then back to our selection tool, hitting V. We can drag that around. And let's drag our suitcase to the center here. Whoa, it's actually almost perfect size. You can grab the edges here, holding down Shift to make sure that you are keeping it the right size so it does center. We did that pretty good. That's actually almost perfect. Let's zoom a little bit closer here. Now you're going to notice a blue X that runs through the picture itself. That's because this is a linked file. I like to embed my sketches into my Illustrator files so I don't lose them. I find that with linked files, someone will delete the file if it's rogue on the desktop or it's not saved properly somewhere on your computer, and then you'll lose that sketch forever, and you'll constantly get warnings every time you open your Illustrator file. So go to the top here with that sketch selected, hit embed, and now it's baked into our file here. Great. Another thing I want to do is eliminate my wood table that I drew this on. So let's create a box, hit shortcut M, and make a rectangle over the drawing area that we can see here, or at least we want to see, and then let go. It's going to cover everything. With that still selected, go ahead and hit V to switch back to your selection tool. And with the rectangle selected, we'll also select the image itself. They'll both be selected. Let's right-click it or control-click it and hit Make Clipping Mask. And that's going to eliminate anything that wasn't covered. Now all we can see is just our drawing here. Great. Now we're going to stay hyper organized here because it will be very helpful when we do go into Photoshop. So go down to Layers and let's label this Layer Sketch. Hit Enter and let's lock that up so we can't move our sketch around. All right, let's zoom in a little bit here. You can see the artboard for our suitcase is nicely placed around the suitcase. We need another artboard for our landscape. So go to Window, Artboards. Our artboard dialog box is going to show up, and the first one's very vague. It says Artboard 1. Let's change that to Suitcase. And then let's hit the plus sign down here to make another artboard, and that's going to make another artboard that's the exact same size as the first one. That's going to be 1080 by 1080, and we're going to change this one. We're going to name it Landscape. Hit Enter, and then we're done with this dialog box. Let's X that. Using our zoom tool, let's step out a little bit. Now we can already see that thin black line that is our artboard isn't falling in the right place, so we're going to have to move that over slightly. Let's hit Shift O, and what that's going to do is that's going to engage our artboard tool, and you're going to know it's ready to go because when we do move our cursor over, it's going to change. It's going to look like we can move something here. So go ahead and grab that, holding down. I'm going to hold down Shift as well, so it is completely aligned with my first artboard. I'm going to drop it right on top there. All right, that looks good. Let's hit Escape there. All right, we have that nicely set up. Let's take a step back. All right, we're good to go. Next thing we have to do is we have to save our file, something we should get in the habit of trying to do constantly because we don't want to lose any of our work. So go to the top here, File, Save, and let's save it on our desktop next to our sketch or anywhere you find handy. I'll hit Save there. OK when the dialog box shows up, and we're ready to go. We have our file set up. We're now ready to start drawing. The first drawing that we're going to be doing is our landscape drawing. I know that first you need the suitcase before you go on the vacation, but the landscape itself is an easier execution of this drawing process that I'm about to share with you today. So we'll get started with that one, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Let's go to our Layers panel and create a new layer called Landscape. Again, we're going to be staying hyper organized here with our setup of our Illustrator file. Let's zoom in a little bit closer here. Now, when we are drawing this thing, we're going to work with layers here, and we're going to make sure that we are drawing things with the top layer in mind and then working our way to the background. So for instance, this one here, we're going to be tackling the foliage here in front of the tree. Then we'll tackle the tree stump. Then we'll tackle the Christmas tree. Then the other foliage. Again, we're going to work until we get to the background sky of this image. So let's hit our ellipse tool. Let's hit L. Let's drag out from, and I'm holding down Shift and Option here to scale it from the center. And right away we have a white circle here. That's not the color we want. So let's go over to our left tools panel. Let's select our stroke and turn that off by hitting None here. And then let's go back to our fill here. Select that one, making sure that that's on top. Go over to our swatch library and choose a green. Any green you like, totally up to you. We have that first circle there. That's kind of that top upper edge. Let's hit our selection tool and let's click that same circle, holding down Option. We're going to copy another circle here. And then we'll do it again and copy another circle here. And now we can scale these so they all look kind of different from each other. I'm going to grab this top edge here, hold down Shift, and just make this one a little bit smaller. This one here, I'm going to make a little bit bigger. And I think I'm going to leave that one as is. Let's move this one over a little bit. Great. Now we do have that gap here on the top of the artboard here. Let's grab another circle, holding down Option, and copy this so it fills that upper edge here and we can't see anything here. It looks a little bit sloppy hanging over the edge here. We'll clean this up afterwards when we do have all of the objects in place. So let's select all of these green circles that we got here. Let's go over to our Pathfinder and unite them, make them one object, and then close our Pathfinder tool. Great. So we have the foliage here. Let's draw the stump here. One thing we want to make sure we do is get this nice little rounded edge bleeding off the page. So I'm going to hit my ellipse tool again, shortcut L, and I'm going to make a circle here. I'm holding down Shift so it's a perfect circle. I'm going to drag it out here. Now it is green. Let's choose the color of our stump or of our bark of our tree. I'm going to make mine orange. I don't know, whatever color you think. If you want to make yours brown, go ahead and make yours brown, but I think orange is a nice color that will pop here. I'm going to hit A to bring up my direct selection tool. I'm going to make a marquee box over these two edges, and I'm going to hit delete. And that's going to just give me a little round edge here. And I'm going to switch back to my selection tool. It's going to show me that shape here. I'm going to move it into place here until I like it. I think I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. I'm going to hold down Shift, make it a little bit bigger here. Again, it's going to bleed off the edge, but we just want it, we want it to look good when it does. And it is down here. We're going to clean this up after. Again, a lot of this stuff's going to be hanging over the edge. With our pen tool, hitting P, let's go ahead and complete this barky area. I'm going to hold down Shift to make a very straight line here, and then come out to the edge here and do the same thing. I'm still holding down Shift. I want everything to line up. And you're seeing that things are lining up here. Those are my smart guides engaging. Should have mentioned that in the past. If you're not seeing these smart guides and these pink kind of notifications show up, go to the top here, go View, and hit Smart Guides, and make sure this is checked on. Some people might find it frustrating to work with. I find it very helpful because it does help me through my process here. Great, so I do have that now drawn here, but it is, we have a layering problem here. Let's right-click this, or we can control-click that, go Arrange, Send to Back, so it is below our foliage here. Now, let's create our second set of foliage on the back here. And I think what we can do here to keep things really, really quick and simple, we can use this exact set of circles that we made over here. Let's click this and hold down Option to duplicate it. Drag it out here. Let's change the color to a darker green. I'm going to go in my swatch and just choose something over here. And I'm going to right click it or control click it. I'm going to go Arrange, Send to Back here. It already looks pretty good. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going to angle it a little bit more so no one can tell that. I'm going to scale it up a little bit too so nobody can tell that I just duplicated that edge there. And all right, that looks pretty good. I think it looks good. All right, so we have that there. Next thing we should do, let's draw our Christmas tree here. To get a triangle like this, it could be kind of tough. So I'm going to make another rectangle here. I'm going to drag it out here. I'm going to add an anchor point directly on the top here that is exactly centered here. And again, if you didn't have your smart guides on, you won't be able to see that. I'll look at it a little bit closer here so you can see exactly where I'm putting it. Putting it right down the middle here. I hit my pen tool. I'm going to add an anchor point here. And with that one added directly centered here, I'm going to go ahead and delete these two here. And you can see I can delete it there because the minus sign does show up. And then I'm going to hit V to engage my selection tool. And this looks pretty good. I'm going to make this a darker green so it does look like a different kind of tree here. So I'm going to go over to my swatch panel, choose the darker green there. And with this one still selected, I'm going to hold down Shift and Option to duplicate it and bring it to the lower edge here. And again, our smart guides are going to tell us when we meet that lower edge of the artboard. Now, with that duplicated, it does look kind of skinny here. So I'm going to make sure that this triangle below the top triangle is a little bit bigger. So I'm going to hold down Shift, grab this top edge here, and just make it a little bit bigger. All right. Now I'm going to select both of these, go back to my Pathfinder, and unite both of these so they are one object. I'm going to close Pathfinder, and then I'll right-click it or control-click it and Arrange, Send to Back, so it is beyond this little stump here. Using my zoom tool, I'm going to step back a little bit here. Cool. Now we have the trees are good to go. Let's start creating our water here. I'm going to use a rectangle tool to help me do that. I'm going to hit M, then go to my lower edge of my artboard here. Again, when the intersect thing shows up, it's going to let me know that I've reached the lower left edge of the artboard. And I'm just going to drag something out here until I meet the right edge of the artboard. I'm going to let go. Now it's still the green from our tree. Let's change this to a nice blue. And then using our selection tool, hitting V, let's right click it, Arrange, Send to Back. Great. We got some nice water here. Now we're going to make these cool little wavy things here. Let's zoom a little bit closer to our water here and let's create a box again. Hit M, drag out a box here. I'm going to hold down Shift so it is a perfect square. Actually, maybe I didn't need a perfect square. Let's grab the lower edge here and make it more of a rectangle. And we're going to do exactly what we did for the tree here. Let's zoom in a little bit closer. We're going to hit P for our pen tool, and we're going to go along this top edge here and wait till we get to the middle here. We'll put an anchor point there, and then we'll delete anything that's on the right and the left here so we have a nice pointy triangle. Now, if we did unselect this, because it's the same blue, we're not going to be able to see this. So let's change the color of this over here to a darker blue, or maybe just any kind of other blue. Maybe this dark blue will work. And with that still selected, I'm going to go ahead and just copy it a few times over here. And there's a really neat way of doing this. I'm going to hold down Shift and Option while clicking and dragging it. I'm going to do it once, and I'm going to let go of it when I like the spacing in between. And with that first one copied, I'm then going to hit Command D a few times. And what Command D is going to do is it's going to copy it the exact same spacing that I had that first one. I'm going to do it a few times until I like it. And after I have a bunch of triangles in a row, I'm going to go ahead and using Shift, I'm going to select all of them, and I'm going to make it one object with my Pathfinder tool. Go to Pathfinder, let's hit Unite, and now let's close our Pathfinder tool, and now take a step back. It's this nice little spiky edge here. If it's too spiky, go ahead and just you can collapse it down here. I'm gonna make them round on the edges by using our direct selection tool. So switch over and hit A. And when you hit A and you have that shape selected, you're going to see all of these little circles that are showing up on the edge here that are going to help me round off these edges. So when I do grab them, they'll all start rounding off here. Now, when I do get to a point where I do think it's nice and round, I'm going to let go. And that does look pretty cool, but I do think that maybe we can go a little bit more. All right, it looks kind of like a boat. Let's select both that and the water and make sure that they are together. And we're going to send them both to the back. And I'm going to scale this out until I like the overall dimensions of it. Again, we're going to be cleaning this up. We're going to let this bleed over the edge. And you know what? I'm not huge on how uniform this is. So I'm going to grab this lower edge here and I'm just going to kind of squeeze it down so it does look a bit more wavy. I'm going to duplicate it again by using Shift and Option and dragging that out here. I'm going to make another one, and I'm thinking this color is a little bit harsh here for the blue. So maybe this top one here, I'm going to change this color to something else. I'm going to make it lighter blue. So I'm going to hit I to engage my eyedrop tool. I'm going to choose that blue again and then hit V, come over to my color here. I'm going to double click and bring up my select color dialog box. And I'm just going to pick something a little bit lighter. I'm breaking free from the swatches they provided because they haven't given us too much of a selection here. It looks pretty good. All right, let's hide that little edge here. And we do have something that I think looks pretty cool. I'm going to just squeeze a little bit more so it looks like more wavy water. Now we have that there. Again, it does look really sloppy. We're going to clean all of this stuff up once we do get down to the end of our drawing here. Let's draw our hills now. And we're going to be doing the same thing that we did when we created our waves and we created our tree. Let's create another rectangle here. Let's hit M. Let's drag our rectangle out here. And using our pen tool, hitting P, let's make an incision right here. Add a point here. And let's delete these points here on the other edges. And now that already looks like our mountain up here, and that's not what we're trying to create, but we can collapse that down and just make it look like our edge. And we're going to do the same thing we did with the water. Now, once you do get a size that you think is a right peak kind of thing there, let's duplicate this over one more time. I'm going to hold down Shift and Option till I reach that edge there. And maybe I'll scale this one down slightly, a little bit more so we do have some variety there. And I'm going to select both of these, come down to my Pathfinder, and I'm going to hit Unite to make them all one object. And I'm going to close my Pathfinder. I'm going to hit Arrange, Send to Back. And we still have this blue. I don't know why I left this blue. Let's change this to a color. I think it should be a nice green. Let's go use our eyedrop tool and choose the same color we chose for the foliage up here. Let's switch back to our selection tool and let's round off the edges here. I'm going to double click this to enter isolation mode. And using my direct selection tool, I'm going to just select these top edges here because these are the ones that I really want to be wavy. And you could have done that with the water, but I thought that the effects that we're going to be doing in Photoshop are going to help us clean that up. So I'm going to create a marquee box over these, and I'm going to start just rounding these off until I like the way it looks. Wow, I almost nailed it. I can go ahead and marquee over this edge here too to maybe adjust this one slightly, make them look a little bit different. Okay, let's hit escape to escape out of that. Let's take a step back. It's looking really good. I think that we have a nice rolling hill. The layers are coming together nicely. It looks nice. I think it looks good. All right, now let's create our mountains. Again, we've done this before already. We can do this one more time again. Create a rectangle here. Any rectangle at all. Let's get a little bit closer. Again, using our pen tool, let's go along this top edge here, make a point right there in the center of the rectangle, and then delete these other edges to make a triangle here, and then drag it out till you're happy with that edge. Grabbing the lower edge, holding down Shift, let's bring it beyond this rolling hill. We don't want to forget to change that color here. Let's change these ones to gray mountains that we have here. Change this one there. And then let's copy over another one. Let's hold down Shift, Option, drag that out here. Let's make this one a different color. Maybe this is a darker gray. And we're going to just scale this down so it is a little bit smaller than that hill. Let's bring this hill in front. We're going to right click it, Arrange, Bring to Front, and then select both of them and send them all the way to the back. Grab these 2 points and just round them off slightly using our direct selection tool. Round them off slightly, and there we go. So we have our mountains. Next thing we need to do is our sky. So let's grab a rectangle and let's go to the top edge here. And this background color that we're going to be doing here is going to stretch the entire canvas. So this is going to be 1080 by 1080. And I'm going to use my smart guides to do that. To make sure that yours is 1080 by 1080, go to the top. Click Transform to bring that up as well. And you want to make sure that this is 1080 by 1080 in the width and the height. Let's go to our Align tool, and we want to make sure it's centered to our artboard and hit Center here, and then Center vertically. And we were right, it was centered, but just for peace of mind. And with that selected, let's right click it, or we're going to hit Control click and Send to Back. And it's still the color of our other mountain. So with that still selected, let's hit an eyedrop tool, hit I, and let's steal the blue that we have here from our water and create that as our sky. Great. Let's hit our selection tool again. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using this guide here to make sure that we are cleaning up the edges here. And we're going to be using our Pathfinder to help us do that. So let's select that background sky color, hit Command C, and then we're going to go in and start isolating all of these objects that hang over the edge and pathfind these so they are flush with our artboard. So we'll start with our foliage up here. Let's double click that to isolate that. We're going to hit Command B to put that in the background. We'll select both of them using our marquee tool, use our Pathfinder, and we're going to be using Intersect. And what that's going to be doing, it's going to be grabbing anything that is overlapping and making it one shape. And the color on top, it's going to keep that color. So that is very handy for our purposes here. So let's take a step back by hitting Escape. And let's do this with all of our objects here. Now, this one here, we didn't go all the way to the edge here. It's going to be totally fine because it is going to be layered. But if that does annoy you, you can grab this point here and then drag it out here. And then we'll hit Command B to paste that background color again, select both of them, and then hit Intersect again. And we're going to continue to do that with all of these shapes that hang over the edge. Double click it, Command B, select them both, hit Escape. We have both of our waters here. Double click that, Command B, select them both, hit Intersect, Escape. Double click this one, Command B, select them both, Intersect, hit Escape. our hills, double click, Command B, intersect, and we'll do that. And then I think the last one we need to do is our mountain. Command B, intersect, escape. All right, so we have our scene there. Everything is there. It does look a little bit clunky. We have our water does look a little bit flat right now. Again, we're going to be adjusting this when we do jump into the Photoshop process and we start kind of playing with the textures here. One thing we are missing is our cloud. I don't know how we forgot the cloud here. So let's go up to this area here. We can move this in a little bit if we wanted to, but we can just also have this live behind this because we are having a layered effect here. Let's hit L, create a circle. We'll use our direct selection tool to delete this lower edge here. I'm going to select that, delete it, hit V to engage this one again. Let's change this to white so we know it's a cloud. Bring it into place here. Scale it as much as you want here so it does make sense. Maybe it does live beyond this mountain. And then with that selected, let's use Shift Option to create another circle, and then we'll scale that down slightly. And then maybe we do another one out here. Make that one a little bit bigger. And then with all of those selected, let's just move it over a little bit. And let's go to our Pathfinder too. We have our Pathfinder still open over here. Let's hit Unite, close our Pathfinder, and now we have our clouds. Now it is kind of odd here. Let's select it with our background and hit Arrange, Send to Back. And there it is. We have a cloud beyond the mountains there. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now let's take another quick look at this and see what else we can do. I think the distribution of our water here can be a little bit better. Let's clean this up here. We can just move this out a little bit. Let's double click this one here, and then using our direct selection tool, let's grab all of these anchors at the lower edge here and just shift it all the way down here. I'm holding down Shift and grabbing all those and hitting Escape again. And then let's do the same thing for this one and have it align down at the lower edge here. Double click this one, grab it, and then pull it down here. Escape. And now that's looking pretty cool. All right, we have our scene here. Let's quickly save our illustration. Hit Command S or go up to File, hit Save here. All right, in the next lesson, we're going to be creating our suitcase. Okay, we're ready to move on to our second illustration here, which is our suitcase. So we have the first one here created on its own layer. Let's go ahead and lock that one up down in our layers panel, and let's add another layer. And this layer is going to be called suitcase. Great. Get a little bit closer here. Click into that artboard to activate that one there. So we know that we're working within this artboard now. And again, just as we tackled the previous illustration, this one here, we're going to be doing the same thing. We're going to be working from elements that we perceive to be at the top, and we're going to work our way all the way to the background. So for this one here, we're going to be doing the buckles, the leather straps, the stickers on the briefcase, the handles, then to the body of it, and working our way all the way to the background. Now this one here is a little bit tougher than the landscape visual because it does include a lot more details here. To get started, first thing we're going to do, as I mentioned, let's go and start tackling these buckles. Another thing that's going to be different here that was different from the landscape itself is we're going to be working with strokes as well as fills. So let's play with that right now. Our buckles themselves are going to be strokes. So hit M to create a rectangle and just drag that across here, and it's filled. Let's go over to our left panel here and flip it to stroke. Let's go to our stroke panel at the top here, and let's just increase this to roughly, I don't know, maybe 15 is a good width here. Now that color obviously is not going to stay blue, so let's activate our stroke. And let's go over to our colors here and change the color. Maybe we'll change it to a nice gold, a yellow. And then let's get a little bit closer here. Click in. Using our pen tool, we're going to make this line down the middle. So hit P to bring up our pen tool. And using our smart guides, let's just center our pen tool right in the middle. It's going to tell us where the center is. Holding down Shift, we're going to make a line that intersects with that lower half there. Great. Now, using our zoom tool, let's zoom out a little bit more. That looks pretty good. Maybe it is a little bit. Select them both with our selection tool. Maybe it's a little bit. It's a little bit more shorter rather than high. Okay, now one thing I have noticed is these leather straps. This round edge here, it'd likely go after the buckle. I think we kind of messed that up, and by we I mean me. My bad. Thinking about belts, the belt itself would have to go below the belt buckle. It'd be round on this edge here, and then we'd see the dots that would connect into this little, I guess, tooth here, and then it would go up. So let's make that adjustment. Again, I mentioned that when we were doing our sketches, we'd likely change our mind when we got to this vector part. So let's hit M to create another rectangle. Let's have it centered within this little buckle area. And using Option and Shift, let's hold that down and create another rectangle out here. Creates a perfect square, but it still does have the stroke engaged there. So let's go to our tools over here and switch this back and make this fill, and then click on it so our fill is above our stroke here. And then we'll go over to our color panel and we'll choose a brown that will serve as that color. Now, I'm just going to use my selection tool and just bring this up here and bring this just below as well, right here. And then we'll right click it or control click, arrange, send to back. And now it's placed behind there. Now let's double click it, because what we're going to be doing is we're going to isolate now, and we're going to make this round edge here. So using our direct selection tool, let's just hit A, and let's make a marquee box over these two lower points here. And it's going to engage those round edges there. Let's just make them round along the bottom and hit Escape to bring us back here. It looks pretty good. Let's get a little bit closer. I think that when it comes to this little spacing here, I think we can close that up so this stroke either goes flush with it or it's a little bit closer so it doesn't show too much of a gap there. That looks good. Now let's take a step back. I think that this little round edge should go a little bit further down. Let's double click that, enter the isolation again. Using our direct selection, let's select this whole lower half, just lower half, and select all of these points. And with our arrow tool, let's start nudging downward a little bit so it gives us a little bit more breathing room. And once we were happy with it, hit Escape to bring us back here. Great. Now let's create those little circles that we have here. Get a little bit closer. Let's hit L to bring up our ellipse tool. And having it centered within our buckle area, let's make it just a little bit bigger than the tooth itself. Maybe this tooth is a little bit narrower. I'm going to change the stroke width just a few points to bring it down to 12. And then with this dot selected, let's choose a different color, brown. Awesome. Take a step back out, see what that looks like. Looks good. Let's now create another series of dots. And we're going to want to have the same space between. And as we mentioned, we did use our step and repeat technique before. Let's do that again here. So let's hit Shift and Option. Drag that out to about here. And then do the same thing. Hit Control D, Control D. Let's select our stroke here. We need this outer stroke to be above everything. Let's hit Arrange, bring to front, and there you have it. One thing we will do as well is, I think it might be handy to have all these dots grouped together. So when we are moving things around, they're not losing their spacing in between. So select one, holding down Shift. I'm going to click all four of them, and then I'm going to hit Command G to group them. So now they are moving independently without being moved away from each other. I don't know how better to explain that. Okay, great. Let's take a step back. Let's do the lower edge of this leather strap now. Let's hit M to bring up our rectangle tool, and using our smart guides to make sure we are selecting the top right part of that leather band. Let's bring it down, make it flush with the left side, and then let go. And then switch over to our selection tool. We'll left click it, arrange, send to back. And now that it has that other dark brown here, it does look pretty good because you can see that round edge here. And we can also add some shading here, so it does give that look of I guess, depth to it. Great. So now we have this created. I think we need to just duplicate it and bring it over to this side. Now, one thing we want to do, and a little trick that I think is very handy, let's select it all with our selection tool, our black arrow, which is V. And then with all of those selected, holding down Shift and Option, let's drag the whole group out and copy it completely over here. Now take a step back. That looks really good. One thing we want to make sure that we're doing here is this suitcase is going to be centered within the artboard. So one handy trick that we could do just temporarily to get that centered is to select everything that we have here, hit Command G to group it, or you can right click to group it. And then with our Align tool, which is along the top here, or you can go to the shortcut here that's in our toolbar. Let's center it horizontally. And we're going to center it up and down once we do have all of the other elements in here. So let's close down our Align tool. And now that we have that centered, let's go ahead and ungroup it. So we're going to hit Command Shift G, or you can just right click it and go to ungroup here. So we now have these objects ungrouped. This is going to be handy because when we do transfer this over into a PSD file, it will keep everything nicely broken up into their own layers. So next thing we need to do is our handle here. I think that should be our next step. Let's create a rectangle here, hit M to bring up our rectangle tool, drag it out here. And because we want this to be stroke, let's go ahead and hit I for our eyedropping tool. And let's click on the buckle to inherit that same width. And with that selected, let's use our direct selection tool, which is A, and then make a marquee box over this lower edge here and just hit delete because we don't need that there anymore. And just to be safe, let's go ahead and select this again, go to our Align tool, and make sure that that is centered as well. And if you want to make sure it's being centered within the artboard, make sure that you have the Align to Artboard as opposed to the Align to Selection. Align to Selection would be a group of things that you want to center together, whereas Align to the Artboard would just align it to whatever the artboard is. So move that in there. A little bit of glitch there. I think that when we zoom in, that should disappear. Okay, it's just my display. My display sucks. Sorry about that. And now that we have that centered, let's go ahead and close our Align tool up there. And let's create the handle itself. So hitting M again. Let's bring up our rectangle tool and make sure we're using our smart guides to get to the center here. Holding down Option while we are moving it from the center here. Let's bring it to a good width here. It's not going to be exactly the same as our drawing here. And once we do have that drawn, it's going to be stroke because that's the last thing we did here. Let's steal or inherit the color that we have from our brown here, hitting I, hitting that tool there and stealing that same color and that same hue. Okay, great. Let's take a step back here. Now we have our handle. We have that there. Let's create our stickers that are going to be living in here. Now, we have made them fairly vague right now, but I think we can have a lot of fun with these stickers because, as we mentioned, we were doing our sketch. Maybe this is a badge of honor. This person that's traveling with this briefcase is really pumped about all of the places that they've been, and they like to show off when they're at the airport or they're traveling. So let's create these stickers here. Let's hit L for our ellipse tool. Let's create a circle here. I'm holding down Shift and Option to scale it from the middle. I'm going to flip it over here because we know we want this to be filled. Let's go over to our colors here. Flip this back to yellow. Let's change this to green. Now, we're going to create a half circle as well that's going to live below the band here. We can steal this same circle. I'm going to hold down Option, grab and drag this out. And getting a little bit closer here, I'm going to go ahead and delete this lower edge here. So it's a half circle because we don't need the full thing. But before I do that, I think we can have some fun with this. And we could put a sun here because often when you're traveling, you're going to a sunny place. Let's add a star to the middle here that will serve as almost like a half sun. Let's just go over to our tools here and select our star tool. And let's use our smart guides to make sure we are in the center here. And let's click in the middle and we're going to hit the star dialog box show up here. To clarify what's going on here, there's a radius 1 and there's a radius 2. Radius 1 is where the edges of the inside points will touch. Radius 2 will be the edges on the outer points. It's going to make a lot more sense. It's going to be trial and error when we first start playing with it right now, but you'll get a sense of what I'm talking about once we do hit OK. So let's go make it, how about 10? 10 points on the outside, 25 and 50. I think that the inner part of that star should be a little bit bigger. Let's make it 30, and let's hit OK to see what that looks like. That's actually not too bad. Let's make it a little bit bigger. And if you remember, there was 2 radiuses. This, let's just imagine there was a circle in here. That one there would be the 25, or we change it to 30, and then this outer one would be the 50. Let's change the color of this to yellow in our color palette. Let's double click it, and let's use our direct selection tool to delete the lower half of this. It's almost going to be like a rising sun. So I'll select all of these points down to the edge. I'll leave these ones here because I do feel that that's that middle point. And let's hit delete. Let's now do it again, but we'll do it to the circle. Let's double click it, enter isolation mode with our white arrow or a direct selection tool with our shortcut A. Let's just marquee over that lower edge and hit delete. And let's hit escape to bring us back. Looks pretty cool. One thing that is missing, but maybe there is another circle in here. So I'm going to select that circle in the back, hit Control C, then click away from it, and let's hit Control F. The reason I clicked away from it is because if it was still selected and I hit Control F, it would only copy it in front of that shape. We want to make sure it goes in front of everything. So grabbing this top edge here, holding down Shift, let's make a circle down here. Oh, already looks pretty cool. And let's make this one an orange. And then maybe the back here is a blue. That's pretty dope. What do you think? Okay, now let's select all of these now, and let's right click it or control click, arrange, send to back. Make sure it's behind that leather strap here. And let's just holding down Shift, let's scale it up a little bit, and we could just grab an edge here with them all selected, and we can just rotate it like this. Another way you could do it, if you wanted to be exact with it and you wanted to perhaps remain or maybe angle your things at a very, very specific angle for everything you're doing, you can also rotate it by hitting R, Enter, and the rotate dialog box will show up here. And at that point, you can start entering any number you want. As long as you have preview on there, you can see what angle that is. I'm going to go 11.25, see what that looks like. That's pretty good. I think maybe 22.5, which is halfway through 45. And this is a great way to remember the angles that you have everything on. I'm going to hit OK there, and I'm going to just drag this underneath. All right, that looks pretty good. Right underneath there. Looks pretty sweet. Another thing that we need to do, if you recall that we were just deleting points there, we didn't have full objects, or we didn't close off our paths. I like to close off my paths because it does make everything a lot cleaner. So I'm going to select all of these individually, and I'm going to make sure I pathfind them to close off that path there. So I'll select the first blue one. I'll go to my Pathfinder, and I'll go Unite, even though it's just one piece. I'll then click on the star. I'll hit Unite again, and then I'll go to my in-between circle, and I'll hit Unite again. Now these are all paths that have been closed off, and we're keeping our vector really, really clean here. Great. So let's close our Pathfinder now. Let's take a step back and see what this looks like. It looks pretty cool. We need another sticker here. Let's do a rectangle one. Let's hit M to bring up our rectangle tool. Just drag it out here. This one here we can make another color. Maybe it's a gray. And let's zoom in a little bit closer there. Right away, what we can do is hit arrange, send that back, so make sure it's behind that leather strap there. And then again, we can just rotate it. This one here, we're gonna just rotate with the edge here, and maybe rotate it downwards this way. Feel free to use the other technique I just shared with you, but we're gonna add a really cool thing here too. What I think it could be cool is, what if there was like a bend here, like this the sticker was applied, but it didn't really go on too well. So let's go ahead and use our pen tool, hit P, and over this shape with it still selected, let's hit one of these edges here. It doesn't have to be perfect. And let's hit another one here. And with those little anchor points added there, let's get rid of this other corner point. and then hit enter to end that there. Now we'll hit our selection tool. Looks pretty sweet. Maybe if you don't like, maybe it should be more on an angle, go ahead and hit your direct selection tool and select these parts here. And with your smart guides on, it'll help you go along that path there. I get a little bit closer, you can see exactly what I'm doing here. You can see that it might go a little bit rogue, but if you move it down really, really carefully, it'll go along that line and have a perfect setup for you. And with that there, let's now create a fold that comes out here. Let's hit our pen tool again, hitting P. And then with it not selected, make sure it's not selected, because if it was selected, you're going to be deleting that anchor point. We can go over it now. Click here, click here, click here, and then close it off here. And then let's change that color to a darker gray. There. All right, let's take a step back, see what it looks like. It looks pretty cool. All right, now it looks like a folded sticker that wasn't applied, or maybe it's peeling off a little bit. It looks pretty cool. Awesome. Now we do have our sun in here. We have this one here is just it's got this nice detail here. This one here is kind of plain. I think what we could do is add a tree. Since our landscape has trees in it, we can go ahead and add a tree in this one as well. So let's get a little bit closer here. I think we can make it a little bit bigger. Let's change the background to it to maybe that green's okay. Maybe we add a large tree inside here that's a darker green. So let's hit our M tool, choose the middle of this, or use our smart guides to get to the middle here, drag a rectangle out. Let's change the color of it to a darker green. Using our pen tool, let's go to the middle here, select and intersect the middle, and then delete these edges again. Make one of these cool tree looks here. And now we can scale it as much as we want. And let's duplicate this edge, bring it upwards. So holding down Shift and Option while clicking it. And then we're going to hit Command D to double that again. That looks pretty cool. And then selecting them all, let's make sure we bring them down so it's centered within here. And now one thing that we might want to do is let's squeeze it in. So let's select all of them again. Select this one, holding down Shift and selecting all of them. With them all selected, we can squeeze this in. I'm going to hold down Option so it's centered within that circle rather than having it down here. I can scale it, scale the width of it, and have it still centered within there. Get that to around here, and then we can adjust these as we see fit. I think this lower part of the Christmas tree should be a little bit wider than everything else. So let's grab that top point, drag it up. Sweet. Do the same thing. Let's grab these both and then do it again. That's a sweet tree. All right, now let's create a stump now. Hit M for our rectangle tool, and then we can do this from the middle. Let's go Shift, Option, make a stump here, change that color to orange because that's the color of our other tree. And then we could select all of these here, go to our Pathfinder, let's unite them, and then collapse our Pathfinder, and then right click it or control click and go bring to front. And now we have that there. And then we can bring this down a little bit lower. And now let's hit Z, bring ourselves out a little bit. That's pretty cool. One thing we need to do though is obviously put it on a little bit of an angle. So let's select it all, hit R, enter, and let's make it go the other way. We can add minus here, and let's just have it angled like that. Sweet. All right, next thing we need to do is let's create our body, because I think once we have the body there, that's going to help us create these edges on the sides here. Let's hit M, and having it unite to the bottom here, hit M, have it aligned with our smart guides, have it aligned with that lower edge of the leather strap, and let's just drag it out so it goes to the top here, and it'll help us lock into place there. And let's let go when we feel comfortable. We feel like it's a good size for a briefcase. And it's green. Whoopsies. Let's change the color of that. Maybe it's an orange. We're using a lot of orange lately. With that now selected, let's hit our selection tool, control click or right click, arrange, send to back, and then take a step back out. That looks pretty cool. And let's, just to be sure, let's make sure we're having this completely centered and make sure it is. And again, we have this aligned to the artboard. We're gonna hit this horizontal line centered. make sure that is in the center, and then we'll close down our align tool. Now, that looks pretty sweet. Let's get a little bit closer here. We already see that our little handle here, we can select both of these, and with them both selected, let's go Control, Arrange, Send to Back. It doesn't matter if it extends a little bit lower than the suitcase itself because, again, these are going to be layered, so we don't have to worry about that. One thing I do think we can do is we can make this a little bit taller. I think that maybe this should go around here. So using our direct selection tool, let's hit A, and let's go down here and just grab everything that is at the top here. Try to avoid hitting any circles or anything else that's on your suitcase, and let's just nudge it with our arrow tool until we feel like it's at a good space. I think this is good. I think that's good. All right, sweet. It's looking dope. Now, what we need to do is create those little protective edges that I said that we would make here, because the body itself is going to help us pathfind that to make sure that they are kind of just flush with the other edges here. So let's create the first corner here, and let's get a little bit closer. Select our M tool, which is our rectangle tool. Using our smart guides, it's going to help us get right to the middle here. Holding down Shift and Option, let's drag this out here till we feel comfortable. Since the last time, I guess it still is on stroke, we can go ahead and use our eyedrop tool, hit I, and let's steal the brown from here again, and then hit V to go back to our selection tool. And if you remember, our sketch had a little bit of a round edge here, so we can round that off with our direct selection tool, hit A to bring up our white arrow, and just click the edge here. And then that'll engage our round edges, and then we could just bring it out a little bit. Using our selection arrow, let's hit V, select the briefcase, hit Control C, Control F to paste it in front. And with that still selected, let's hold down Shift, grab this one, and then go to our Pathfinder tool and hit Intersect. And what that's going to do is any overlapping areas, it's going to just grab that there. Now let's close down our Pathfinder and let's take a step back and see what that looks like. That's pretty cool. With that there, we can start to duplicate these on all of these edges here. The first one we can do is really simple. We can grab this, holding down Shift and Option, drag it until it locks, and our smart guides are going to help us intersect there. If you have to get a little bit closer, totally fine. Let's make sure that it did connect there, intersect, and then because this was a little bit of a shape and looks like a square, we can grab the top edge here and just rotate it around there. And if you don't feel like it is locked up, try to drag it up and put it back down there again. Okay, let's take a step back. Sweet. Now that we have those two there, what we can do is we can reflect these to have them nail this side here. This will also give us an idea of whether our whole image is centered at all. So let's select both of these, holding down Shift, using our selection tool, and then Control C, Control F. And once those are copied, let's hold down Shift and select the orange base of our suitcase, and then reflect it by hitting O, Enter. And what that's going to do is it's going to bring this reflect dialog box up, which will allow you to reflect things horizontally. We want to do this vertically, so it just flips everything that's over there. And that orange shape did help us bring it exactly over because we knew that it was flush with this side. When we did reflect that shape while still having those selected, it just brought them exactly over to the other side. Let's hit OK. Let's hit our selection tool and click away from it. Let's step back. This looks pretty cool. Now, next thing we need to do is create this floor here. Now, we weren't sloppy to draw outside of the artboard here. We did very well. So let's just hit our rectangle tool, M, and using our smart guides, make sure that it does intersect with that lower line and drag it out till it goes to the left edge here and let go. It is brown, so let's go ahead and select another color. I think that this floor, maybe we can inherit some of the colors that we used over here in our landscape. Let's hit our eyedrop tool and let's click this blue and then right click it or control click it and arrange, send to back, send that behind the briefcase. And then with that still selected, let's hit Control C, Control B to copy another one of these shapes to the back. And with that still selected, let's just drag that all the way to the top here till it intersects with the top of the artboard. Great. Now it's all blue. We're going to have to change that background color so it does kind of give us a little bit of contrast. We're going to inherit some more colors from here. Let's hit the eyedrop tool and then go ahead and steal that light blue. One thing we might want to do is we might want to scale it so we don't have too much white space around this area here. So what we could do is just select everything that is on the artboard here. And once we do have everything selected, what we can do is hold down Shift and marquee box over these two other elements. So what that's going to do is it's going to unselect those and then keep everything else that was selected originally selected. And with that there, what we can do is just drag this out, holding down Shift to make sure we are maintaining the same constraints that we had before. And we can just make this to a size that we think it looks proper. And I think that that's about right. Looks pretty good. Now, let's take a good look and see if there's anything we want to change before we move into Photoshop. One thing that I do think that we should change is the color of this handle. I don't think this should be gold anymore, and I think it should be a little bit thicker. So I'm going to change the stroke width of this up till about, how about 20, 25? Is that too thick? Let's try 25, and let's change the color of it. I don't like the gold anymore. Go to engage our stroke here, and let's change it to a dark brown. And we can play around with that brown to see which one's the good one. I think maybe this brown is good. Great. I think that looks good. Another thing we could do as well, I'm seeing this sun, because we made the briefcase orange, let's change the color of the sun as well. Select that, and let's change this to a different kind of orange maybe. Oh, but you see what we did here, a little troubleshooter here. Coming over to our tools here, we still have our stroke engaged. Let's go ahead and create none for stroke, and then click over to our fill to get that above there. So when we are changing the color, we're changing the fill. Now we can come over to our swatches again and just change that color. I think that that's a nice vibrant color. Another thing that I'm not liking, I don't like the gray anymore. I think the gray would be good as a shade, but maybe this should be white. So let's go over and change this one to maybe a lighter gray. I think that looks good now. Another thing that I think would be really handy is, and that's a pun almost, is that handle. I think the handle would look really good if it had some lines in it. So let's create some lines in here that will help us give a little bit more detail within our handle. So let's hit our pen tool, P, and let's use the top edge here. Holding down Shift, let's create one line here and hit Enter to end that shape. Let's use our eyedrop tool to steal the same color and stroke width from this handle shape. And with that there, we can now isolate that down, double clicking there, holding down Shift and Option to copy that shape. And then we can do Command D, Command D, Command D, Command D. And let's select all of these now and hit G to group them. And let's hit Escape to exit the isolation. And with that still selected, we can go ahead and just center that. We know that everything on our board right now, our briefcase, our handle, all of this is centered within the artboard. Let's do the same thing for these handle details. Let's go to Align and align that in the middle. Now, this is a little bit thick. I thought that it would look good with this stroke width, but we can bring that down slightly using our stroke tool right there. How about 15? 15 looks like a good number. Let's use our zoom tool to step out a little bit, and looks good. I think we have all of the objects here. We are ready to now move these images over into Photoshop. We're going to be doing that in the next lesson, so I'll see you there. All right, we're back. We're about to jump into Photoshop. Go ahead and fire up your landscape PSD. And we're going to start with the landscape because it's a bit simpler approach to the textured application process here, because it's a lot larger elements we're working with here as opposed to the suitcase, which has a lot of really fine details that will take us some time to really play with to bring that to a final stage. So we have Photoshop open. The first thing I want to bring attention to is our workspace. If your workspace doesn't look like what I'm seeing here, it's probably because you're using a different, Photoshop setup. So go to the top right here. Bring down this drop-down menu and make sure you're working from painting. If you are working from painting and you have that check mark there, you can go ahead and reset that workspace to make sure that it does go to the default settings. And this is a lot like Illustrator. If you wanted to set up your own workspace and play with it and only highlight the tools that you really like using, that's the same thing you can do here. But to keep things simple, we're going to be working with painting because it has our swatches, has our brushes, and our layers panel, which is really all we need. All right, now we have that out of the way, let's go into our layers panel and take a quick look and see what our Illustrator file did when we exported it to a PSD. And you can expand that folder. You'll see that everything that we've drawn in Illustrator has its own layer, and it's labeled layer number. And we're going to go ahead and relabel that to make sure it does make sense and it's easier for us to understand. Before we do that, what I want to do is intro you into a few of the tools that we'll be using, which is predominantly the brush tool, masking, and blending modes in the layers panel. So go over to your layers and let's just create a new layer here. And once you do have that new layer, come over to your artboard and hit B. And what you're going to see here is a circle show up. Or if you don't see a circle, you might see a crosshair. The reason you're seeing that is because your cap locks is engaged. And what you can do, you can hit cap locks on your keyboard and you'll see that once you do hit it, it brings over either a crosshair or you have that circle. I prefer to work with the circle because it shows me the real size of the brush. Speaking of size, you can adjust the size of this brush with your keyboard as well using the square brackets on your keyboard. Left square bracket makes it smaller, right square bracket will make it bigger. What you can do is you can test out what that looks like there. And when I do hit it, you see just the circle there. It has soft edges around the paintbrush that we just made there. I'm going to Control Z that to bring us back. Although that does look great, what we're going to be doing is something kind of special and we're going to be changing the mode there. So hit brush again, come up to the top right and change your mode to dissolve. And then if you go back to the artboard and you click that, you'll see that the brush is a lot different. I'm going to zoom in with my zoom tool. You'll see that it gets noisier and a bit grainier. It's got more grit to it. That's the kind of brushes that we're going to be applying across our entire illustration here. And we're going to be masking elements to make sure it only applies to certain elements and it allows us to be a bit more dynamic with the way that we are adding this textured look. So Control Z that. Let's take a step back out here and do a little bit of a test here. And we're going to test it on our front foliage area here to give you a bit of an idea of how that masking technique will work. So go ahead and with your new layer still engaged, let's hit the eyedrop tool to select the white here from the clouds. Hit B again. Let's size up our brush and just do a few quick touches on the edges here that will be ultimately touching and following the path that we've created here for that tree. And it might look a little bit messy at first, and what you'll see is just paintbrushes just in the middle of your picture, and you're probably freaking out right now. If you come down to your layers panel, again, make sure that you are applying it to that new layer. And once you do see that you have the new layer has some brushes on it and it's above your foliage area, hold down your Option key and just hover above here between these two layers, and you'll see that a white box will show up when you get to that really middle intersecting point. While you're still holding down Option, go ahead and click that with the arrow there. And then if you see what happened to your image, it just basically applied to that one object. And that's basically what we're going to be doing for the majority of the time while we're in Photoshop, is we're going to be applying this type of texture to everything. So that's the first one here. What we want to do is now just play with the blending mode of this, because this does look a little bit bright. And we're seeing a white kind of, it just looks too white. So if you come to the top here in your layers panel, and you got to drop down here, you can play with the blending mode of what you just applied there and get something that is a bit subtler. And right there, I see overlay or soft light look great. So let's put overlay. Actually, let's put soft light. And then what you could do, if you wanted to add additional texture to this one object, you can go ahead and click on the object itself, hit the plus arrow, and do it again. So I'm going to add a darker color now to the right edge of this shape. I'll hit my eyedrop tool and I'll steal the same green as the object itself. Let's hit Z to take a few steps back. Hit my brush tool again. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger with my square arrow. And I'm going to click these edges a few times. And you're not going to see anything happen. But if you come down to the blending mode and we change that to multiply, it's going to change the color of this slightly. It'll be a little bit darker because even though we are using the same green as the foliage, when you change it to multiply, it takes the value of that color and it depending on what the background is, it will make a very unique look. So we got that there. Looks really, really cool. Now we have a bit of an understanding of those layer masks, which we're going to be jumping into really, really hard right now. Let's first clean up our layers panel and label everything appropriately. So again, this is going to be very helpful when we are handing this off to clients or third parties, and to make sure that they understand what's going on and they have to open it and make any adjustments. And it also just is something that is for peace of mind as well, to make sure that we are understanding this file next time we have to open it. First one we're going to do is the two textured layers that we made. Let's label this one highlight. The one below it we're going to name shade, right? And make it anything that that makes sense to you. This one here I'm going to name tree front. The one below is going to be stump tree, or actually let's name it tree stump. Why was I switching it up? Tree stump. Next one will be tree back. And if you can't see these thumbnails, you can't really make out what it is, let's name this one pine tree. You can hit that hamburger menu on your layers panel and go to panel options. And you have an opportunity to adjust the size of these thumbnails as well. Keep in mind that this might slow down your system, so use it at your own risk. So I'm going to keep it the regular size for now. Now continuing to relabel our layers. This one here is called water front, water middle. This one's just called water. This one's called hills. Mountain left. Mountain left. Mountain right. Cloud. And then the final layer, we'll call it BG for background. Sweet. So now we have that all labeled. Let's jump into it and start applying all of these textures. So we have our front foliage area applied. Let's go to our tree stump. And with the tree stump selected, let's hit plus to create a new layer. Holding down option between the layers, let's make this a layer mask. And let's change the blending mode right away to multiply. And we'll label this one shade. Using our eyedrop tool, let's steal that orange. Hitting our brush tool. Adjusting the size if you need. Let's just apply a nice edge to this here. You can already see that this is really looking a bit deeper than it initially was when we created the flatter layer. We have that there. Let's go to our tree back here. Again, with that selected, hit plus, holding down option, going between the layers. Let's mask it. Change the blending mode to multiply. We'll label this one to shade. Using our eyedrop tool, again, stealing that green, hitting B again, and then just giving it a few touches there. And this might get a little bit repetitive, but once you do get into the groove of things, you'll really start to get amped up about applying these textures. Okay, next we'll go to our pine tree. Again, adding a new layer, holding down option, creating that a mask. Let's add a blending mode to it. Again, this one will be multiplied to it. We're doing a lot of shading here. We'll call this one shade. And eyedrop tool, let's steal the green from the pine tree and let's just touch a little bit of the edges again. And I think what we could do is something pretty cool with this one here. Let's go back to the pine tree, select that one and create a new layer. And using our marquee, we can isolate where we're applying this texture. So go ahead and hit M to bring up your marquee tool and just drag a box here to come to the edge of the first point. Let go there, and what you're going to have is a set of marching ants just creating a box around that tree. With the marching ants doing their thing, let's hit Command-Shift-I, and what that's going to do is going to flip the selection. Instead of this being selected, it's everything else but that box. And with those engaged, let's hit our brush tool again, and let's just touch the edge here. And you're not seeing anything yet because we forgot to change the blending mode. So come down to your layers panel and hit multiply. Once you do have that there, let's hit M again, click anywhere on the screen. It looks pretty cool. what we could do as well with that layer still selected in our layers panel, we could just drag it over. I'm holding down shift to make sure it is lined up with that edge. It looks pretty cool like that. Now let's see, we have a bit of a, it's almost like this tree is casting a bit of a shadow. Awesome. So let's label that one edge. And again, anything that makes sense to you, it doesn't really have to make total sense, but you can just label it to make sure the thoughtfulness was there. And now we want to do is add a little bit of a shine here because we're anticipating the sun is coming from the top left here. So go ahead and add a new layer. And we're going to label this one highlight. Using our eyedrop tool, let's steal the white from the cloud. Hitting brush tool again. Let's just touch these edges here. And with that still selected, you can go ahead and play with the blending modes to see what you like there. I think that one looks good. Overlay. Let's choose overlay. And now our pine tree is looking pretty cool. Now we're moving on to the water. And we're going to be doing a different masking technique here. Instead of using another layer to mask this one, we're going to start just taking away from this. So in our layers panel, go down to the bottom here and hit the square with the circle in it. And what this is going to do is going to create a layer mask. So on that layer, you're going to be seeing a white square to the right of it with a bit of a lock in between it. And what that's doing is it's basically locking these two layers together. But what this right layer mask thumbnail is ultimately a stencil. So if you click on that square and you'll see little white edges around it, you look at your colors in your tools that are selected, it'll be white and black. Now if you click back, it'll go back to whatever colors you had selected. That's because when it comes to the stencil application, black is ultimately removing from the stencil and white is adding to it. So go ahead and click that white box again, come into your artboard with your brush tool activated, hitting B if you don't have it, ready to go. Start clicking away at the shape and you'll see that it'll start taking away from it. And we're just going to make it subtle around the edges here. So it looks like these waves are getting hit by sun and there's some kind of light action there. And if you find that you're messing up, you can go ahead and just switch back to white and add a bit more there too. But that looks really good. And with that done, let's go to the next one. Make sure you're clicking away from that white box. And let's hit layer mask again with the white box selected. Go back with your brush tool and let's start taking away from this one. And you can see what that does when it's taking that away there. And then we have a kind of a cool look here. We can go back up to the darker blue one and remove some of the edges off here. And you could change the size of your brush to give it that unique look. Looks good. All right. So now we've taken away from those. Let's go to the water now. And we're going to go back to our masking technique. Let's add a layer. Holding down Option between it. Let's mask it. Change it to highlight. Using our eyedrop tool, let's steal the white from the clouds. Using our brush tool, I'm going to make this one really, really big because I want it to cast a nice large gradient over the edge here. And then with our blending mode, let's just play with it to see which one we like there. Oh, I like this blue one. Color dodge. I also like soft light. Let's go color dodge. And then with that still selected, we can play with the opacity of that layer too. And just bring that down. And you could do that with all of your shades. If you find that maybe it's a bit too harsh, you can always just play with the opacity of it to bring it down a little bit. And that looks really cool in our water. So let's do the same thing on this edge too, just to apply a little bit of an edge to behind the trees. Sweet, looks cool. Let's go to our hill now. Again, applying a new layer, holding down Option key between them, masking it. And let's change that blending mode to multiply. Let's label it shade. Let's use our eyedrop tool to steal the green from the hill. Hitting B to bring up our brush tool again. Now let's bring down the size. And I'm going to add a nice strong line across this one to add it all between the hill and the water. So I'm going to hold down Shift and make a straight line across this. It might take a long time to draw there. My system might not be as fast as yours. But once that is done, hit your V tool, and what you could do is just move that around till you like it. You like the spot that it's in. I think that looks good here. And play with the opacity too if you think that it's a bit too harsh. I think it looks pretty good. Let's move it out a little bit more. And let's also add some highlights to the hill. So click your hill layer, hit the plus to add another layer to the mask set. And let's label this one highlights. Let's hit the eyedrop tool to steal the white from the clouds. Hit our brush and let's just touch these edges here. Now let's go over to the layers panel and play with the blending mode. I think overlay looks good. All right. Great. Moving along, let's go to our mountain on the left. Again, add a new layer. Hit Option. I apologize if this is getting repetitive. Hold down the Option layer between the two. Let's change the blending mode to multiply. We'll call this one shade again. Using our eyedrop tool, let's steal the gray. Hitting our brush tool, let's just add some nice shading between that there. Now this is going to be one of those ones where we need a highlight again. So go ahead and click on your mountain, add a new layer. Let's call this highlights. Let's use our eyedrop tool to steal the white from the cloud. Hit and brush again. Let's touch it along these edges here. Sweet. That looks good. I'm not going to change the blending mode there. I think that the white looks nicely shaded there. So go to the mountain on the right. Let's add a new layer. Again, holding down Option, masking that piece, changing the blending mode of that new layer to multiply. Let's label it shade. Using our eyedrop tool, let's steal the gray from that mountain now. Hit B to bring up our brush tool, and let's touch something on the inside here. That's pretty cool. I think we should also do a highlight, even though it's behind the mountain. Let's see what that looks like. Click on your mountain right layer, hit the plus sign. Using your eyedrop tool, let's steal a white from there. Let's label this, going back and forth here. Let's label this one highlight, and let's now hit the brush tool and touch that up on the inside here. Let's come down and change the blending mode to something a bit subtler. Let's go soft light, and now our mountains are applied. Great. So coming down, now we have our cloud. So what we're going to do with the cloud is we're going to take away from it. So we're going to use that same masking technique as before. So let's go ahead and hit the square with the circle within to mask that there. Let's hit our brush tool. Make sure you have black engaged because we're going to be taking away from this shape. And just actually make it a little bit bigger. Just click away at it here to steal from that. That looks good. Now, onto our background, let's add a new layer. Again, Option, click between. Let's label it highlight. With white still engaged there, let's make this brush really, really big, and we're just going to make a big blobby brush stroke behind the tree here. And then let's go down to our blending options, and let's change it to overlay, so it looks a little bit grainy there. All right. Awesome. Change back to our selection tool. And what we have to do now is, if you recall, when we were doing our sketches, we had a few lines here in our tree. And what I've done is I've created a wood texture, and I've included it in the resources that you can just drop right here. It is completely vector. So go ahead and download it from the resources. And let's go in our layers panel and go straight up to our tree stump. Let's click on that. And once you do have it downloaded, let's open up a folder where it is located. Mine is located on my desktop. It's called wood.ai. I'm just going to drag it onto my file here. You'll have an open as smart object dialog box show up here, which is perfect. What smart objects are is basically it retains the editability of that layer instead of having it as a flat raster layer within your layers panel. So go ahead and hit OK. And then you'll see it lands on our desktop here with some bounding boxes that gives us an opportunity to resize it, and it'll maintain it. It gives us an option to resize it. So And you can just drag it around here and make sure you're dropping it in a spot that you like. So I'm going to put it around, I'm going to make it go around here. I'm going to resize it till I think it's in a good spot. And I'm going to hit enter to drop it. Great. Now you'll see that something happened here. If you go down to your layer panel, you'll see that we have some weird things going on here. It's because when we did drop it, it kind of messed up our mask layer set. So with that still selected, we can go ahead and hit Option and square between the tree stump and the wood. And now it'll mask both of the shade and the wood. And if you ever had to go back and take things out, you can always hit Option, click them, and remove them as well. So with our new vector layer added there, let's add a blending mode to this as well. And just kind of go down and hit a blending mode that you like. And I think that soft light looks great. And with that still selected, let's take away from it so it looks like it is a part of the image. So we'll add a mask layer there. And with our brush tool, it's really big last time we used it, let's just take away from these new lines that we took to make it a little bit subtler. We could just do that all around these edges here. All right, that looks cool. And then we can even just go into our opacity layers and just play with that a little further as well, just in case we don't like the way that we applied them. We think it's a bit too harsh. Go down to 70%. All right. Now that we've applied all our textures here, let's take a look at what we did here. We could take a step back. One thing I want to do here is add another layer to this tree, because I do think that we can give this thing a lot more depth if we played with the shapes here. So go down to your tree front here and let's right click or control click that layer and come to the top here and hit duplicate. This one here, we're going to go tree front 2, hit enter. And right away in our layers panel, everything just got messed up, and you'll see the same thing happening on your artboard. So what you want to do is now let's just make sure that everything that's on top here is masked within that lower tree front. And what you want to do is just mask them all. So holding down Option and clicking between all of these layers to make sure they're all masked there. And with that new layer that we just duplicated, let's hit our V selection tool and let's just move it around here. And you're not seeing it yet, but what we're going to do is now click here on your tree again and add another layer that's below that tree front 2 layer. Let's hit our eyedrop tool to steal the green from our tree. Let's change the blending mode here to multiply. And let's label this shade below. And then with our brush tool, hitting B, let's just start peppering it on the edges there to make sure it gives us that. Yeah, that looks really cool. And you can just hit in your direct selection tool. Let's go to your tree front, and you can start just moving that around till you like it. You like the spot that it hits. I think this looks good here. And I think we have a complete visual here. We have the texture applied to all of the shapes. One last thing we need to do to really give this thing its extra textured look is add some noise to the entire thing. So go down to your layers panel, let's unexpand that folder, and with that folder selected, let's hit a new layer, and we'll label this one noise. Let's hit our eyedrop tool to steal the white, make sure we have white selected, and let's hit G to bring up our paint bucket tool, and we'll just click once to fill the entire screen with white. Now, once that's done, hit V to bring up your direct selection tool so we're not getting confused, and then come up to the top here and let's go to Filter, Noise, Add Noise. You get a noise dialog box going to show up here. You can change the degrees of the noise here. You can also change the level. You can also change it to color or not so color. I'm going to choose mine as monochromatic, and let's make it 50%. And with that new layer still selected, let's come over to the layers panel and let's change the blending mode to color burn. And once you do have it to color burn, you'll see that it's going to make the colors really vibrant and it's going to make the image really, really pop. So there you have it. We applied the textures to our landscape visual. Next, we're going to be tackling our suitcase. And we are back. I have just minimized Photoshop here to bring us back to our desktop. I'm now looking to get started on our suitcase. So Realizing that we have our PSD stored on our desktop, we're now ready to inspect it. We haven't had a chance to see what it looks like, so give that a double click. Now, the very first thing we want to do is head over to our layers panel to make sure that everything is in order, and it's kind of easy to understand. So let's go through and label it and check out what we have here. So we have a folder called layer 3. Let's put that invisible. That is our handle lines. We can go ahead and just change this to handle lines. We can remove that folder as well. Let's drag it outside of the folder, and then we can go ahead and trash that folder. Next thing we have is our corners. Now, what we have is all our corners on separate layers. Let's select all of those, which we know are 4 through 7, or it might be different for you. We're going to right-click our layers panel here, and we're going to merge those layers. Now it'll be one piece, and we flick that on and off. It's one piece, so label that one corners. What's the next thing is our tree. And here's where we can start using folders to our advantage here to keep kind of organized here. Is we know that this is the tree top. This is the tree stump. We can group that together and make that tree sticker. This will keep us a lot more organized when we have everything. There's the circle. And you're going to comb through these layers to make sure that everything is in order. So when we are executing, it's fairly easy to navigate. And you see some things aren't together. That's very odd too. You could just keep hitting the eyeball on the layer itself to see what they're talking about. Let's call this one corner. Seems like it's really out of order here, which is okay, because we can always fix that. We don't need that folder anymore. Let's delete that. Call this dots, and I think we're going to combine it once we find the other dots to make sure that that's all together. And we have our straps here, another gold. So we know that there's dots again. We have more dots. So once we found that, we can just bring that up here, get this one here, and then let's merge this together to make it dots. And you'll see over on your artwork, some things will be kind of a little bit messed up when we start playing with our layering. That's something we can definitely fix when it comes to it. This one's strap. Let's find the other strap now. The top brown strap, there it is. Let's click those two, right click it, and we're gonna merge them. And we see the other straps there too. I'm just looking at the images now to see what I have. Let's label this one lower strap, and let's bring it below that strap one. And we have everything is somewhat in order here, but we can keep plugging along. We can get back to our gold buckles in a second here. Let's folder these ones up. Sun sticker. And with these ones here, I'm going to call this one just really simple names, because once they're in the folder, you really make out what each piece is, depending on the layers itself. And there we got the white paper, finally, that white sticker. Let's bring that up and let's find it. You can just hold, I'm just holding down and dragging this up here to find corner. We're going to group those together and call it white sticker. And we want to make sure that we're moving this below the straps. Remember, we're just going to do it below all of the straps here so we can get a little bit of color there. This one here is the case itself. There's the handle. And you can see that the handle is very far away from the other handle lines. Let's bring those together and then come back down here and get handle. We'll call it handle below. Hopefully we remember what that is. And then floor. And we'll call this one BG for background. I realize that we haven't labeled everything in the middle here. Let's go ahead and find out what we have going on here. Okay, great. That's our gold buckle. We can't move that, so let's call this one teeth. We're going to move this one up to this one here. Let's merge that one and call it buckle. Come down here. We have our other tooth. Let's merge that. Call it teeth. And there we go. Now we're looking at it. Make sure everything is in order. We have organized everything appropriately. We're ready to jump into it and start blasting it with some dissolve textures. So let's start from the top here. We have our handle lines, and I think we can fade that below. So, and we have two things that we have to apply here. So let's go and to the bottom here and choose Add Layer Mask. Hit your brush tool and get a really, really big brush with your black marker in your layers mask itself. Let's just take out some of this lower edge here. And then with the handle below, let's add a layer above. Hold down Option, click between it, call it Shade. Change the blending mode to Multiply. Use our eyedrop tool. Let's choose the brown from the handle itself. Then hit our brush tool, and using any kind of brush that you like, let's just add a little bit of a shadow down here. And we'll do the same thing. Let's add another layer, bring the shade below it, and we'll call this one Highlight, so it has a little bit of a shine at the top of it. Oops, I gotta spell highlight right first. There you go. Let's choose the white with our eyedrop tool from our sticker, and let's just drag something across there. That was really, really too much. So we can use our selection tool, hitting V as a shortcut, and just drag it up a little bit till it's got a little bit of shine there. And then let's change the blending mode. Let's play with it, and maybe soft light looks good. Yeah. All right, moving on. We have our corners on our briefcase. I think a good approach for this one here is to give it the idea that light is coming from the top left or a little bit above the suitcase. So we want to apply the textures in that manner. So let's add a layer. We're going to layer mask it by clicking Option between the layers. Label this one Shade. Using our eyedrop tool, let's choose the same color as the dark leather strap. Hitting our brush tool, let's just brush a straight line. I'm going to hold down Shift and just brush right across the bottom here. And again, using V, which is our selection tool, I'm just going to select that same layer and just drag it down a little bit here. Looks pretty good. I think what we could do as well is we can add it at the corners here too of these little things we have here. And then let's add another layer. Call this one Highlight. Using our eyedrop tool, let's again steal the white from the sticker here, or whatever that is, a gray. Hit our brush tool, and let's just touch things up, and maybe a bit of a bigger brush, and just touch these sides here. You make it a little bit smaller and make it a little bit more there, and do it all in these corners of the corners. On the corners of our suitcase. And then come over to our layers. Let's play with the lighting effect here. I think soft light again is going to be the winner because it looks nice and subtle. That looks good. Moving on. Let's now get to our tree sticker, and we're going to have to get a little bit closer here. So zoom in real tight. And what we're going to be doing is just hitting the sides up here with a little bit of texture, as well as the stump itself, and then a bit of the sticker so it looks like it's got a little bit of shine to it and maybe a little bit of shade as well. So starting with our treetop, add a layer. Again, we're going to layer mask it. We're going to call this one Shade. We're going to change the blending mode to Multiply. Using our eyedrop tool, let's choose the green from the tree. Hitting our brush tool, and let's make it a little bit smaller, just touching the edges here. Doing the same thing with our tree stump, adding a new layer, masking it, changing it to Shade, changing the blending mode to Multiply. Hitting our eyedrop tool, let's select the orange and do the same thing. Let's just touch the corners here. And now when it comes down to the circle, we can make a big blob texture here and then another one over here, and we could just make one a highlight and then one a shadow. So adding another layer, Option click, call this one Shade. We're going to change the blending mode to Multiply. And then let's, again, don't forget to hit your eyedrop tool to steal this same green so we can multiply on top of it, and go back to your brush tool. Let's add another layer, Option click, and we'll call this one Highlight. Using our eyedrop tool, let's steal that white or gray from that sticker again, and let's just touch it on the edge here. And this one here we want to make real subtle. Let's go down Obviously, soft light might be the winner. I love soft light. And then using our magnifying glass, let's step out here. It's looking really good so far. Now let's move on to the next thing in the layer panel. Go ahead and minimize that folder. And we're going to move on to the buckles. And we can have a field day with these buckles, but I think that something very simple is probably the best bet here. All these textures obviously are just a great touch, so I think less is more in this instance. So let's choose the white from our sticker again with our eyedrop tool. Add another layer above buckles. Let's option click between, call it highlight. Hit and brush. Our brush tool, let's bring it down a little bit. I think that we can come up to the hardness of it and just make it a little bit harder because we don't want it to spread that much. This is just a buckle. And then just brush the edges here. It doesn't have to be perfect, just something that looks a little bit highlighted. You can even just click along like that, just really, really small clicks. Actually, anything, because we're going to be playing with the blending mode now as well. Go ahead and touch that, change the size of it with our square brackets, and then coming down to our layers panel and take a good look at those highlights. Let's play with our blending mode to see what works the best here. Overlay looks pretty good. Let's select overlay. And I think that looks pretty good. Let's add another layer in between these two here and call it shade. And I know I said less is more, but I think there's something really cool we can do here. So let's select the orange now with our eyedrop tool from the suitcase. Hit our brush tool, make this a little bit bigger. Remember, we did play with the softness of it, so we can make it a little bit harder. With that done, let's just hold down Shift. You can draw a line right below the buckle, and then let's play with the blending mode. Now we can go straight to multiply, and what we can do here is play with the opacity of that layer as well to make it a little bit more subtle. And I think that looks really good. We can move on now to our dots. And there's not really too much to do with the dots other than add a little bit of shade to it. So add a new layer, option click between, let's call it shade. Select that same brown from the holes themselves or the dots, and then back to your brush tool. Let's click just very subtly. Oh, we're not seeing anything here because we forgot to change our blending mode. So go back, let's change that to multiply and just give it a few quick clicks there. And it does look pretty aggressive, so I'm going to take down the opacity of this one as well. Moving on, we have the teeth of our buckle. We can go ahead and add just a little highlight to that one. And you might want to follow the same highlight technique that you did for the square edges of the buckle. And let's remind ourselves we did an overlay at 100%. So come back down to our highlight above the teeth area. Let's use our eyedrop tool to steal the white from the sticker. Hit B again. And just right here on the edges, let's just touch these up. And then with our blending mode, let's change that to soft, light, sweet. Very, very subtle, but there's something there. Taking a step back out, what's next in line is our straps. Now, the straps themselves don't look like they need too much. So let's just add a layer, mask it, label this one shade. Using our eyedrop tool, steal that brown, hit our brush. Let's make sure that it's the softest brush it could be, at 0%. And then just let's make it really, really big and touch the edges here. So it just gives it a little bit of depth, and it doesn't have to be perfect. We have our multiply on. Great, moving on. I think that a lot of impact here will be with the shade of this overlap here. So add another layer. Let's option click. We're going to call it shade. And don't forget to change your blending mode to multiply. Using our eyedrop tool, let's steal that brown. Let's hit B, and let's just play with it. And feel free to just adjust the size. Again, I'm using the square brackets to make my brush bigger and smaller. That looks nice and deep. And we can go to the bottom edge here too and just give it a few clicks. So it gives it those edges a little shade. Awesome. Now moving on, we have our white sticker, and there's not too much to do here other than perhaps just add a little bit of shade below that corner. So let's go to our white sticker, add a new layer, click between it, call it shade. Let's hit our eyedrop tool, steal the gray from the sticker itself, Back to our brush tool, go down a little bit smaller, give it one click, and then let's play with the opacity rather than playing with the blending mode, because I think that will have a little bit more impact there. And another thing we might want to do is just add a little bit of shade between, because this is the first sticker we're dealing with that's overlapping with the strap. Let's bring the size up a little bit and just give it one click to, feel free to zoom in to see what kind of shade you are putting. I think that looks good. We could still play with the opacity a little bit more so it's not so harsh. Great. Now moving on, we have our sun sticker. This one's going to be fun. So expanding that folder, let's go to the red. It's very repetitive, but it will look amazing in the end. So let's add a new layer. Let's option click it, call this one shade. Let's choose multiply. Using our eyedrop tool, let's steal the color from the red and then make that a little bit, and let's touch that up. Great. Now going down to our yellow, add a new layer. We're going to option click between it. Let's label this one white. Steal, again, the gray or the white from our white sticker, and be sure not to hit that texture. Make sure you're hitting the whitest part there. Back to our brush tool, let's scale this up a little bit and click right behind here and see what that does. Looks cool. And let's just see what the blending mode does. Color dodge looks very nice. And then to our blue is where we can have a lot of the fun. And to the blue, we can add another white one there as well. Using the same color, let's hit our paintbrush and just touch it up. And you can do it a few times and then play with the blending mode. Color dodge is starting to look really cool. But soft light, I think I'm always sold with soft light. Even overlay. Let's do overlay and then play with the opacity a bit. Now for that part as well, we're going to have to add some shades. So new layer, let's label this one shade. Again, we're going to hit multiply. Let's eyedrop and choose the blue from our sticker. And using a smaller brush, let's add a little bit of shade there. Using our magnifying glass, let's step out a little bit and then zoom in a bit, see how it looks. It looks really good. Next on our list will be our case, and this is where we're going to be doing a lot of shading here. So add a new layer. Again, we are going to mask it, label this one shade, or let's change the blending mode to multiply. And using our eyedrop tool, let's steal that orange, change over to our brush, and start playing with this. So the first thing I think we need to do is just do all of the textures that are behind all of the elements here. So the corners of our suitcase, maybe it's behind the stickers. Let's just do a click there, another click here. This one here we can do a little bit off, and then maybe we do it under the straps a little bit too, so to give that bit of depth. Now we can add more specific area shades as well that will overlap with these shades. So let's add a new layer, bring it back down, change this one to multiply as well, and let's call it lower edges. Using our paintbrush tool, using the same orange, let's just drag a nice strong line at the bottom and a not so straight one here. And then using our selection tool, we can go ahead and move that around, and you can even click on the layer and use your keyboard to just nudge it around till you like the spot that it's in. And I think that looks really cool here. But what I'm noticing now is that we need some darker shade along these bottom edges of our corners. So let's go up and find our corners. There it is. Let's add a new layer. Call this one dark edges or lower edges. I'm not sure which one was a better name. And then using our eyedrop tool, let's steal the dark brown, switching back to our brush tool, and let's just touch it up along the bottom here to make it match. And feel free to Control Z it if you think it's not appropriate. I'm trying to make it match the other one. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then with that still selected, let's play with our blending modes. I think this does the trick. Darker color. All right, now we can move on to, and let's go back to where we were before, and let's choose the next thing in line, which is our handles that are below the actual handle part. So I guess the handle attachment. Let's create a new layer. Again, mask it, label it shade, change the blending mode to multiply. Using our eyedrop tool, let's steal the dark brown from the handle and then hit our brush tool. And we're just gonna, anything that's being covered so it gives it that depth. And we're moving on. And now we're just adding some textures to the background and the midground that lives below the suitcase. So what we need to do is now apply textures to the floor and the background. And that midground will just basically be a floor that this suitcase is sitting on. So likely we would have to add a little bit of a shadow. And the shadow doesn't have to make complete sense. This is, again, just an illustration that we're putting together, and I think that a lot of folks that are seeing this thing will use their imagination and say, okay, it's a shadow. So go ahead and add a new layer above that one. Again, we're going to option click it, and we're going to mask it, and we're going to call this shadow. And this might be trial and error. What we're going to do is do a mask inside of a mask inside of a mask, and I'll show you how we're going to do that. Using our eyedrop tool, let's steal the blue from the bottom, change our blending mode to multiply, and then using our brush tool, let's make a strong straight line at the bottom here. Now, switch over to your selection tool, which is shortcut V, and just move that around a little bit until it's just below the briefcase. And once that's there, we can go ahead and add to this layer. So choosing our brush tool again, I'm going to use a bigger brush this time, and I'm just going to touch up the top here and make it almost seem like it's fading a little bit over there. And then when I do have that somewhat filled in over here, we can now remove aspects of this shape. Mask that's over the floor, we can then mask that one. And make sure you are drawing within your white square there. Using your brush tool, let's use black and just remove some of this now. And you could just touch the lower edges just very slightly so it's just a little bit off perfect. Same thing with this side here. And you can make it a little bit bigger too. All right. And with that added, what we could do is just add a little bit more of a scene here. Let's call this one highlights. And then selecting the white from our sticker, using our brush tool, let's just make a really big brush and touch up these edges here. Just add a little bit more to it. And then we'll do the same thing for our background as well. We still have the white selected. Let's add a new layer here. We're going to mask it. We don't really have to because it is the very last thing in line. Go ahead and hit G to bring up your gradient tool. Go to the top here. Make sure you are selecting dissolve in the settings. And make sure that you have white to transparent selected here. And then holding down Shift, come back to your layer and just drag the gradient up. The alternative there would be for you to use a really, really big brush and just make the size of it very, very large and just start clicking away and adding to this gradient. I do think that sometimes those really straight gradients are very, very helpful. So with that all done, we have our textures applied. Now we can just inspect this a little bit more to see if we have missed anything. And right away I'm seeing that we have this nice strong shadow on the bottom. We probably need a highlight above the top here. So go to locate your case layer. Add a new layer to the masked subset, and let's drag it to the top here. Call it highlights. Use our eyedrop tool, steal the white. Again, use our paintbrush, and we had it really, really big from before. Holding down Shift, let's drag it across the top, and let's play with the blending mode. I think that soft light might be the way to go here. And you are realizing that now we have to add it to our corners. So go locate your corners. Your corners layer, which should be at the top from what I remember. There it is. And we already have a layer called highlights. So let's add to that. Click on that layer. We still have white selected. Let's just add a little bit of a shine at the top here that matches that set. Great. Looks awesome. Now We're zooming in. Everything looks like it's applied. It looks nice and deep. The very last thing we need to do, of course, is what we did with our landscape visual. We're going to be now adding the noise layer. So go to your suitcase, your main suitcase root folder, and just collapse that down. Add a new layer above, and we're going to call this one noise. Let's go and hit our bucket tool, which is G. And let's fill the layer with white. We already had white still selected. And then coming up to the top, filter, noise, add noise. We have the same preset that we had before, which is 40%, uniform, monochromatic. Let's hit OK. And then coming down to our blending mode, select color burn. And of course, let's play with the opacity. I think last time we used 55%. So let's apply that again, see what that looks like. Looks good. All right, we did it. We have finished applying our textures now to our visuals. In the next lesson, we're going to be exporting these images. See you there. All right, we're ready to export these. We have both the suitcase and the landscape still open in Photoshop. The method we're going to be using here for saving these as just flat images is a rather classic tool called Save for Web. So go to the top here, go File, Export, Save for Web, Legacy. And the dialog box is going to pop up, and it's going to give us a lot of details about the image itself and what we can expect once we hit save. One thing I want to bring your attention to is the size of this one. When we're posting on Instagram, we are going to be doing them at 1080 by 1080. Now, it did jack itself up to 4500 by 4500 in Photoshop because we did choose 300 pixels per inch. Totally fine. What we could do is just change the values here to 1080 by 1080. Hit Tab, and now you'll see the actual size of it. Once we have it there, another thing I want to draw your attention to is the size of it. Now, this one says 1.666 megabytes once we do save it as ping. But what if we saved it as a JPEG? What would that look like? It brings it a little bit smaller. So user decisions there. Make sure there is no quality loss as well when you are changing between the file formats. I'm going to go ahead and save mine as a JPEG because it is a lot smaller here. So hit save. Make sure we're doing that. Make sure we're doing that on our desktop. We have the same file name. Let's just hit save there. And then going over to our landscape, let's do the same thing. Now I'm going to show you how to do it with a shortcut. I'm going to choose to bring up your Save for Web dialog. Let's go Command Option Shift S. I know it's a lot of buttons, but it's going to bring up that dialog box a lot quicker. Go to your size, change it to 1080, and then we're going to go to the top here, save it as JPEG. And look, size looks good. Let's hit save. And again, save this on our desktop as well. All right, there you have it. Let's minimize that. Let's go take a look. And we could just drag these to the middle here. We can hit space to preview them and take a look at our images. We did it. All right, these images are ready. Now you have your textured filled, voluminous images ready to be shared with your friends on Instagram.